What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you 5 of my favorite TRPGs. As someone who plays a lot of CRPGs, which are my favorite genre, playing TRPGs, which are an incredibly similar genre with some titles kind of blurring the lines between each, makes it no real surprise that TRPGs are some of my favorite games out there. So today I thought we'd take a look at a few of my favorites, and while many people tend to think of things like XCOM or Fire Emblem when it comes to these types of games, I don't generally consider them my favorites, even if I do still need to cover XCOM on the channel at some point. But I do of course acknowledge that they are very good and well regarded for a reason. That said, with all of that out of the way, let's actually dive into this and talk about a few of these. So first up, we have Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Daemon Hunters, which is a release from last year in 2022 that I really took a shine to. Obviously it takes place in the Warhammer 40k universe, but we play as the Grey Knights, trying to stomp out various plagues that are taking place, courtesy, of course, of Nurgle. And when it launched, my main complaints were that it didn't really have a lot of variety, but many of the core systems were pretty great. That was later addressed by a bit of DLC known as Duty Eternal, which added things like different enemy types, new missions, new units you could take control of, that added quite a bit to the game, which for me cemented its place as one of my favorites. It's genuinely a lot of fun, and I think the Warhammer 40k universe is great for this particular genre of games, as much of the war game as well as the overall aesthetic and everything really lends itself to this genre. And between that fact and how much I enjoyed this one, I was encouraged to check out Warhammer 40k Mechanicus, which is another TRPG set in the Warhammer 40k universe that is also one of my favorites, even if this one runs a little on the shorter side. A much smaller in scope title compared to Demon Hunters, but it comes with some fantastic elements that I think really help the genre along. My only real complaint for this one is that the difficulty has a bit of a break point. It starts off very difficult, but the enemies don't really adjust or change as you level up and move through it, meaning that once you level up and get to a certain point, you'll kind of just start decimating enemies, and they don't really have a chance to fight back, which is where the fact that this game is relatively short is going to help you out. But nonetheless, we play as part of the Adeptus Mechanicus, taking on a bastion of Necrons, which sees us engaging in a variety of missions that lead to one of a few different endings depending on how we play it. And while this game isn't likely to hold your attention for a substantial amount of time, it is a very fun experience, and definitely worth a run if you're looking to get into a little bit more of Warhammer 40k. That brings us to our third entry, where we will move to a slightly different franchise, though a classic one nonetheless, and this is the Tactics Ogre remake that came out last year, known properly as Tactics Ogre Reborn, which is a reimagining of a game that released all the way back in the 90s, with a lot of updates and changes that make the core experience still pretty much what it was, though making it a bit easier to get into these days. But Tactics Ogre is a real gem of a game. Honestly, if you like TRPGs, this is one of those ones I would really recommend you to play, as it's basically a must-play for the genre. The combat and customization is incredibly in-depth with all sorts of secrets to find. You could easily get hundreds of hours out of this one, and it's considered one of the greats of that genre for many of those reasons. If I had to give a single complaint about this one though, it would be that I find the level cap that they introduced a little bit frustrating, because oftentimes the enemies will be a few levels ahead of you because you're forced into a level cap. And personally, I would have liked to see that raised to at least even with enemies, because as a result the game feels a little forced difficulty-wise. But all around, it's still a fantastic entry into the genre, which made it one of my most played games for last year, actually, according to Steam Replay. And speaking of another game on my most played last year list, we have Troubleshooter: Abandoned Children. an indie title entry into the genre, which sees us in the fictional city of Valhalla, where crime is so bad that vigilante groups known as Troubleshooters are employed to help with the rise of crime, and we play as one such group. In terms of combat variety and all sorts of options available to you as a player, Troubleshooter really takes the cake here, with some systems and mechanics being added almost entirely to fit one single character you'll get, which happens in multiple instances, with one of them being able to catch and tame animals and another one being able to build robots, each of which has its own rather in-depth subsystems that you can customize those things with, and that's just the tip of the iceberg for what is available in this title. While the actual story and what's going on there is a little convoluted, much of which can be chalked up to some translation issues, I would say, the combat depth and variety definitely makes up for it, and while the game is several years old, it is still regularly updated. And in terms of sheer content, this is again one of those ones where you could easily get hundreds of hours out of a game that's going to run you like $20, which makes it an easy pick for a favorite. That though does bring us to our final entry on the list, and this is actually Hard West 2, another indie title that came out last year that was very enjoyable. With a supernatural Wild West theme, they had a lot going on, but probably my favorite thing here is the bravado system, which means if you kill an enemy with a character, you get to take another turn, and because of this, you could set up some pretty massive turns and tactical situations where you just get to take tons of actions, and it was really fun to engage with that system. On the game's launch, it had a few small issues that the game very quickly ironed out, such as some of them having a turn limit imposed, which was supposed to be a higher difficulty level thing, but it was still present on the lower ones. But they wound up patching that out to keep that only to the higher difficulties. They also nerfed an enemy that could just destroy you in one hit, which was really annoying to work around up to that point. So there were some minor issues, and after those things got worked out, it became a very fun title to engage with. And in addition to the bravado system, they also provided a few other unique things that I thought were cool, such as small sort of hub open areas to explore with your team, where you could find secrets and upgrade your party in a variety of ways, one of which was finding all of the extra cards, as your progression was tied to sort of poker hands that you would find by collecting cards from various missions, and depending on the quality of the poker hand you gave each character, it would determine their sort of stats and setups as you went into combat, with the other part of that being equipment, such as the weapon you were using, made for a short and snappy progression system that I think fit the Wild West theme incredibly well, which really makes it stand out to me personally, which is why it's on this list. That, though, is going to wrap it up for today. I certainly hope you enjoyed this video. By all means, let me know your favorite TRPGs down below. I'm sure I will hear all about XCOM and Fire Emblem, but there are a lot of other great entries into this genre, even more obscure titles than I got into, and I'd love to hear all about your takes on them. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.